Bienvenidos todos. Welcome to En Casa con la Plaza. I'm Abelardo de la Peña Jr., Director of Marketing and Communications with La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. And we welcome you to today's presentation, The Independence of Mexico, 200 years of heritage between two nations. As you know, La Plaza de Cultura y Artes brings you these conversations, presentations, demonstrations, and performances from our home to yours, 3, sometimes more times per week. It's our way of fulfilling our mission of telling the little known stories of Mexican Americans, and all Latinos in the founding, growth, and evolution of the greater Los Angeles region. If you're on Zoom, you see that we have a chat feature. Please let us know where you're coming from, where you're viewing from. We also have a Q&A feature. We will take questions and we'll answer them after the presentation. Those of you who are joining us on Facebook, as you know, we have our comment feature there. Let us know where you're viewing from. Send us your comments, send us your questions, and we'll take them afterwards. But for now, I'd like to let me formally introduce our participants for the day, give you a little brief bio, and then I'll hand it over to them to give our fabulous presentation on this historic day, the 210th anniversary of La Independencia de México. Que viva México. First of all, I'd like to tell you about Jose Antonio Aguirre. He was born in Mexico City, obtaining his BFA from the School of Art Institute of Chicago and an MFA from the California Institute of the Arts. Since '76, he's lived and worked in the US, Chicago, Austin, Los Angeles, as well as going back to Mexico City and Colima City, currently residing and working in Pasadena. He's received national and international awards, including the Fulbright Garcia Robles awarded by the US State Department and the Cultural Exchange International Grant from the City of LA, Department of Cultural Affairs. He's been a teacher, artist in residence in various institutions, given several lectures and workshops at universities, museums throughout the US and Mexico and in Europe. He's also an artist. He's mounted over 14 solo exhibitions of painting, drawing, and mixed media and prints in the US and Mexico, participated in more than 125 collective exhibitions, nationally and internationally. Among several of his public art projects, which he's well known for, his most ambitious mural, Our Legacy Forever Presente, was completed in 2004 for the East LA Public Library. And in 2015, he completed the public art commission for the Azusa Alameda Gold Line Foothill Extension. Most recently, he created a glass mosaic mural for the Foothill Transportation Intermodal Center and a granite sculpture for the city of Azusa. May everybody in Azusa, Monrovia, all those cities, and all of us, please be safe out there with what's going on as far as the fires. We also have with us tonight Margarita Medina, born in Mexico. She studied communication at the Universidad del Valle de Atemajac in Guadalajara, an experimental curator with major exhibits of Latin American art in the US. Her writing and translation work make books on LA history and culture available to English language learners, inspiring a new generation of local artists and readers. Margarita herself is also a gifted artist who specializes in popular art and has been developing art programs for families and children in libraries, schools, festivals, and galleries, complementing art exhibits. Currently, she is program director of one of my favorite institutions, the Mexican Cultural Institute of Los Angeles. So please, let's welcome Margarita, who will start off our presentation. I'll be going away for a little while, but as I said, comment, Zoom, Q&A, let us know where you're coming from. And with that, Margarita.
Thank you, Abelardo, and thanks everybody who is joining in this presentation. And this is going to be a very funny in some ways talk or chat, but mostly I'm going to try to explain a little bit about some the opinions, the way that writers, researchers, intellectuals in Mexico and all over the world think about the how Mexicans feel about being Mexicans, and also what is the meaning of the Independence Day for them here and in Mexico. Unfortunately, there are so many um, publishers that have talked about the Mexican independence here because uh, Cinco de Mayo is the one that really covers everything about the Mexican festivities. And even for our own people, you know, Mexicans living in the United States, Canada, or around the world, sometimes they get confused with the fact like the fiesta for Cinco de Mayo or Independence Day is the same or either, you know? And it's sad because coming from Mexico, Independence Day is a major festivity for us, for Mexicans. I come from Mexico, but I've been living here happily for almost 30 years. I settled my family here, which you know, I also want to tell you about how my children are involved in this current of Mexican identity or American or Mexican Americans. And maybe some of you are going to be also familiar with this kind of opinions, okay? But let's talk a little bit about the Mexican independence. Maybe you already know, but this brief text, I took it from the Comité Mexicano Cívico Patriótico, which is a nonprofit organization founded in 1931 in Los Angeles. And since then, their sole purpose is to keep Mexico's history, their culture, their roots, their traditions, their customs, and their beauty alive. The members of these organizations are very proud to continue to bring this tradition to the community of Los Angeles every year. How? Maybe you are familiar with the parade in East LA. For 74 years, nearly 100,000 East Los Angeles and surrounded communities lines up along iconic Cesar Chavez to watch school bands, equestrian units, folkloric groups, floats, and dignitaries celebrating Mexican Independence Day. The parade is one of the largest and longest running Mexican Independence Day parade. A parade theme is chosen yearly to reflect the past, present, and future of the Hispanic community. So maybe a lot of you haven't been there personally. Let me tell you, maybe once. I don't feel the need. You need to participate in this kind of events. But of course, I feel very Mexican, and I feel my pride about you know, coming from Mexico or being among this beautiful community. But let's say, said that Mexico celebrates Independence Day on September 16th, the day that we remember a priest, Catholic priest named Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla, proclaimed his rebellion in the town of Dolores Hidalgo. This is in Mexico on September 16, 1810. After 300 years of repression, the town or the people from Mexico was really relegated because the Spaniards or the peninsula, as they call it, you know, the people who came from Spain and also their descendants, you know, the criollos, we call it criollos, they were the only ones who had, you know, who lived a life where they were, they had the opportunity to study, to have good jobs, but not the people of the you know, the low class, okay? Because in this case, at this time, they were a lot of classify, you know, people in castas. You maybe have hear about the castas in Mexico, and they were segregated in some ways because they were like citizens, like second or third even class, okay? But anyways, so the independence movement took place during the time of the Enlightenment, okay, in Europe. And also in times when a lot of rebellions or battles took place in that time. So in Latin America, knowing this situation, they started, you know, thinking about what is the best way to really get rid of the crown of Spain, because they were working for them, they were relegated, they were not have any value as a people of the country, and they were tired, you know. It was already, they were 300 years of repression, and they were looking for equality. And the cura Hidalgo, or the father Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla, was the one who started, you know, the El Grito, to call everybody to fight for their laws, okay? And well, Mexico, once known as New Spain or La Nueva España, was a colony harshly ruled by the Kingdom of Spain for over, I already told you, 300 years. The native population was oppressed, farmland and personal wealth was confiscated, and only Spaniards were allowed to hold political posts. And even they were not allowed to study, to have a degree, or being in the position of earning money, you know, to sustain their families. They just work hard for their owners, or because remember at that time too, slavery was reigning in those countries. Slavery also was the first aspect that the independence brought to Mexico and also Latin America, because in South America, Colombia, Chile, all those countries also participated in this emancipation. And in Mexico, it happened a little later from other countries, but Central America also got together with Mexico basically at the same time. And that's why we celebrate with them the Independence Day here in Los Angeles. Okay, maybe you've heard about El Salvador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Honduras. They celebrate the same day. Well, in their case is the September 15, and September 15 is the Mexican Grito. Have you heard about the Grito? It's the reenactment of the words when Padre Hidalgo called el pueblo, the people, to fight for their liberty, okay, and the civil rights. But let me go over who has been talking about since the past century, because identity, this term in Mexico was not the first need, or they didn't think about the identity as Mexicans. But this came through the time, because remember, Mexico was involved in not only the independence, then it came the war between the invasion of the United States to Mexico, and also the Reforma war. And also at the beginning of the century, the last century, the revolution. Well, the term identity came from this time, you know, just it's very recent. People didn't think about what was the identity of being Mexican. And also because there are two aspects in Mexico, very, there is a polarity with castas or with the level of the of people, you know, the poorest and the richest or the army, they were not equal. So in this case, people who started the war thought about why the equality is not given to us, okay? So in that sense, well, the independence gave them all these rights that they were demanded, but this war lasted 11 years. It finished on the September the 27th with the signing of the Act of Independence. And well, Mexicans were the first people who abolished slavery, even before the United States. But well, some authors, some intellectuals wrote about it, and they want to try, and they wanted. Some of them started, you know, in the 1950s or so, in that those years. And there is an example of Samuel Ramos. See, Samuel Ramos, he spoke and he tries to understand what is the idiosyncrasy of the Mexican and think about the way he conduct himself or herself, you know, and in the sense of vocabulary, way of living, and also the what is their life, since they were secluded in the farms, in the factories, or even just mainly farmers, because they sold some part of their goods and agriculture, or just being the workers for the big haciendas. Okay, Ramos start. What is the name of? I'm going to use Samuel Ramos and Octavio Paz, because they are two positions in which the idea of Mexicans is reflected on one hand, but we also have the philosophical approach of Samuel Ramos, which addresses the concept and the reality of pelado. He talks about, or he puts in three different groups the Mexicans. El pelado, which is the poorest person of the people. Then the burgess, you know, the richest, and the citizens, or the person of the city, okay? But in this case, the strongest approach for to explain the identity of the Mexicano or Mexicanidad is the pelado, the poorest person, okay? And start talking about the way he conducts in terms of the words, and there is a word or a verb, I will say, that is every single Mexican knows about it and use it. La chingada, o el chingar, ¿sí? Chingar is a word that has different meanings, but now is a verb that defines not only these people, the poorest, but also, you know, it's part of the idiosyncrasy of the Mexicans. Because the verb talks about le chingar your mother, chingon, like the strongest, go to the chingada means like go far away to your mother or whatever. It has different meanings, okay? So in this way, Octavio Paz also used the chingada, okay? The word in his novel, The Labyrinth of Solitude, because also it's like an analogy of this two authors where the vocabulary used for the used by the Mexicans is very similar, and they talk about the situation living in the low levels of the society. Okay. For example, the Mexican circumstance in the eyes of Ramos, Samuel Ramos. See, maybe you haven't heard about it, about him, but I really recommend you this author, because it gives you a scope of the what Mexicans or Mexicanidad or Mexicanes means. Okay. Samuel Ramos. Maybe at the end I will give you a list of all the authors that I will talk about. It's very brief, so I'm gonna take you like a brief tour by these authors and tell you what they wrote and about what. Everything is related to the term identity, Mexican identity, or who is Mexican, or what is the meaning of Mexican, or who feels like Mexican. Okay. I will explain later, but just for a little bit, my children. So when I ask them, how do you feel? Do you feel Mexican? Do you feel Mexican American? Because I keep saying you are a Mexican American, but in a sense, you know, because objectively they are Americans. Everybody who was born here is an American person with, you know, having all this experience and exposition to this culture. So they don't have anything to do with the real Mexican culture, but just by heritage, you know. And sometimes because we eat tortillas, but they don't feel like the real Mexicans. The ones who really celebrate, the ones who really feel that emotion, that pride, are the Mexicans who came from Mexico, who were born in Mexico, and specifically the ones who moved into this country or out of the country, the Mexico, to another place when they were already young adults or adults. Okay, so those are the ones who you will see, they celebrate, they feel the pride. But what about what is the meaning being Mexican? If you ask me, I will tell you, oh, I feel Mexican because I was born there. I saw all its culture. I eat. I know the language. I know the jargon. I know how is my people. But if you ask me, and what is your relation with the native people? And I will say, none. Okay, even though I'm proud of all the folklore or the popular art that is produced in Mexico, thanks to them. If you tell me, are you an Spaniard? No, neither. You know, I don't feel like I'm a Spaniard. I'm a mestiza because I have the heritage of, you know, the Spaniards and the native people. But I'm like a mix, you know, and a lot of people in Mexico is a mestizo, see? Even though, you know, there are people from foreign, you know, citizens who were born in Mexico and they feel like they are Mexicans. But one day, I remember here in Los Angeles, I was in my office, and this teacher from Mexico, from Puerto Vallarta, Daria Elias, she was the first foreign person who was born in Puerto Vallarta, in Mexico, in Jalisco. But you talk to her, you see her, everything is like Mexicans, like the one I know and I am. See, but somebody from here told me, yes, but she's not, she is French, or she's Canadian, she's not Mexican. It's a, excuse me, then you are not American either, see? That's the way. So there are different aspects that we need to really identify and to explain who is real Mexican or what is the meaning, okay? I feel completely Mexican, and I didn't know that we had a conflict trying to include every single Mexican in the same bowl, okay? But no, if you see a Oaxacan person, another native person, you don't see it with a charro hat, okay? So it's the same. So in that sense, or the Spaniards, because there are a lot of people in Mexico. No, I come from Spain. I come from France. I come from from all over the world, even though they were born in Mexico. Okay, but they don't want to. They don't want to be Mexicans, like because for them they feel like they are part of native people, or they are part of another group. They don't like it. Okay, because when this situation started, you know, at the early last century, remember there was the President Porfirio Diaz who wanted to be very European, and he wanted to install, you know, the European style in Mexico, mostly like French. Okay, so the French for this president, or for this mentality, was Europeans are intelligent, Europeans are educated, Europeans have taste, okay? And what about the Mexican? The Mexican alluded only to Indians and the Huaraches, see? So that's why Ramos discredits the national and longs for the foreign, since it is not only the follow the other, you know, so it's like a imitation, because the people sometimes they don't want to be or to feel like Mexicans, because for them it's like less, so the value is less than the Europeans, but also they don't want to be Europeans because they are not. So this is the about what Octavio Paz talks about in the Labyrinth of Solitude. This very threads of the idiosyncrasy, the Mexican idiosyncrasy or the philosophy, you know. But also not only them, you know, Samuel Ramos, nor Octavio Paz, but there are more authors. The Laberinto de la Soledad, the Labyrinth of Solitude, is a reflection, okay? The author concerns about the Mexican, his psychology and his morality. Then there is another book or another author, Claudio Lomnitz. Claudio, in his book, La Nación Desdibujada, something like, I don't know exactly if there is a translation into English, but something like The Blurred Nation, Mexico in 13 Essays. What we're talking about Mexico, what happens? Well, the country has changed so soon, rapidly, over the past 3 decades, okay? That is difficult, if not impossible, to define its contours, you know, today, because with this transculturization, so globalization, we've been changed, and we look, or we act similar to another countries, okay? But this blurred nation that Claudio Lomitz talks in his book gathers 13 aces on Mexico in the era of neoliberalism and globalization. For example, we have the situation with Ayotzinapa, Mama Rosa, Oscar Luis, the 1985 earthquake, you know, that is incomplete, frustrated, not existent. There is a transition to democracy. Octavio Paz talks about it. He says Mexicans on this side and on that side, the repeated economic crisis, Carlos Chavez, Memín Pinguín or Memín Pinguín, okay? There are identified the Mexican with those troubles, living in different periods in politics, you know, or administrations. There is Yuri Herrera. Yuri Herrera has another book, Señales que precederán al fin del mundo. What is the translation? Signs that will precede the end of the world. This is a novel without a doubt. Is one of the unique novels of all those that have been written, you know, in Spanish, the turn of the century, this 21st century. And also one of the most beautiful and precise, where the author creates his Mexico. He builds, okay, the idea of Mexico through legends, stories of the past and the present, okay? So he describes, like take an X-ray of the Mexicans and their rituals, their way of living, the way of thinking, their education, and how the system take them to, in a way they want them, okay? Carlos Monsiváis, another good author. Los Rituales del Caos, the Rituals of Chaos, is famous for his inquiries into the realities of Mexican culture, what we know as popular culture and high culture, okay? The popular culture is very important because this is the main aspect of the Mexicanos, the Mexicanidad. I don't know if you saw or you know about a film, it's like a documentary, which is called Hecho en México. Hecho en México is a film that really portrays most of the Mexican life, okay? So Los Rituales del Caos, the Carlos Monsiváis, it has to do a lot with this way of thinking and how the Mexicans are, okay? Maybe when you go to Mexico, if you've been there, also how they sell their products on the streets, how they try to do whatever they can to take your attention because they need money, either with joke, with juggling, you know, on the streets, eating fire. And this has to do with the popular culture, okay? The music, even the little restaurants, the food, everything. Paola Vázquez, you will find in Paola Vázquez in her book, Aquellos que dejamos de ser, ficción y nación en México. Those we stop being. It will be the translation that I did, but I don't know. Aquellos que dejamos de ser, ficción y nación en México. Paola Vázquez. This book interwitnessed the process of social transformation and the conceptual change of Mexicanness. Ya no es Latinx like here, right? Mexicanness. The search for national identity is an endless game in which that which make us Mexicans is never discovered. That this is the book where those you know, this work attempts to discard the mysticism that surrounded national identity for decades and arrive at a moment of self-knowledge and critical disbelief. Those we stop being is an invitation to reread Mexico's recent past and think about the need to change our constructions of national identity. I will say by abandoning, you know, outdated stereotypes and typifications of the Mexicans. I have the sixth book I will recommend you, and Ernesto Soto Páez. This is Al filo de la patria, los héroes masacrados, the edge of the nation, okay? This book is basically a very close view of the how the Mexicans are evolving, are changing, and are adapting in the new verge of the life, okay? And the influence from around the world. So Al filo de la patria is one of the books that I really recommend, and it's Ernesto Soto Páez is its author, okay? I'm gonna finish already with these other books because it's very, for me, they were the most important books if you want to know about the Mexican identity. Los hijos de los dioses, el grupo filosófico Hyperion en la filosofía de lo mexicano, Ana Santos Ruiz. The Sons of the Gods, the Hyperion philosophical group and the philosophy of the Mexican. Here, this book exposes an old obsession that has occupied numerous intellectuals, social scientists, artists, and men of letters in Mexico, at least since the late 19th century. Towards the middle of the last century, a group of young university students, mostly philosophers, set out to update their researches and national identity, okay? So this is an academic text about to find lo mexicano and its philosophy, okay? El ABC de las y los mexicanos. This title sounds very contemporary, okay? De las y los, in the way that now we have to talk to be politically correct. The ABC of the Mexicans, but in Spanish we use las y los. This, its author is Guadalupe Loaesa. Guadalupe Loaesa, remember, I don't know if you have read the book Las Niñas Bien, okay? Well, in this case, El ABC de las y los mexicanos talks about or go into those fine lines of the vocabulary of the Mexicans, okay? The ABC of the Mexicanos is a fun walk through the words and phrases that Mexicans use in our everyday conversations. La Mexicanidad, Fiesta y Rito, de Leonardo da Yandra is another one. At the end, I will give you the list, because for some of you that might be interested in knowing more about this concept of Mexicanidad or the Mexican identity, these are good references. Okay, so let me finish because I need to pass the time to Jose Antonio. And also, you know, Jose Antonio maybe will talk about the confusion with Cinco de Mayo and the Mexican tradition for Independence Day. Here in the United States, even Mexican Americans, Chicanos, or Mexicans from, you know, different generations, they don't celebrate the El Grito, they don't celebrate the Mexican Independence Day in the United States. Why? Because this is more political, historical, talks about war, okay, and the conception of the Mexican community. But for the American community, they don't have to do anything with this celebration. That's why Cinco de Mayo, one of the companies, the beer companies, started in the 60s, or late 60s, to celebrate the Mexican culture. But Cinco de Mayo also, maybe another time we can talk about it, because Cinco de Mayo has a very deep, you know, history on its celebration. Okay, not only the beers and the dancers, but Cinco de Mayo was celebrated with a different approach. Okay, so artists, I already talked about some authors, but La Mexicanidad, not only you will find it in books, but also with artists, in music, and painting. And for this time, so Jose Antonio can talk about better about this experience. Jose Antonio.
Please unmute Jose Antonio.
Jose Antonio, we cannot hear you.
Myself. Hello?
Yep.
Okay, we are ready to start. Let me share a screen with you for this conversation. Give me 1 second. What is happening in here? Okay, ready. Share. Well, you know, basically what I'm trying to talk about is to give you really a quick overlook of the Mexican Independence Day, the circumstances. We can see a map of how it was like in 1810, you know, 210 years ago. And I wanted to share this one because this was what happened last night in Mexico City at El Zócalo. You know, there were no people. It was a completely very careful celebration. But one of the things that we are not familiar with is the circumstances of how this happened, you know. And Margarita touched bases about how a group of Mexicanos, especially in the 1920s, you know, they were getting together in different separate organizations, and they decided to unite to start raising funds to help Mexicans in assistance. We have to understand that the Mexicano community has migrated constantly to the United States since before it was part of the United States. California, since before it was part of this country. So anyway, they start organizing. There was Señor Rafael Solórzano, who was really curious about what to do. And he went to talk to the Mexican consul, Rafael de la Colina. That's why he's here as a co-founder of the Comité Mexicano Cívico Patriótico. This was very important to get that support and alliance with the Mexican authorities, because the Mexican community who migrated here felt that they still needed the connection. And at that time, we have to understand that it was not as easy as now, you know, to travel into Mexico, with the exception of Tijuana. And Tijuana, 100 years ago, was not what is now. You know, they wanted to have that closer relationship. So they started really uniting to mostly do the Mexican celebration of the Mexican independence. And like I say, you know, they started doing some groups, as we see these señoritas in 1925, you know, with these different dresses. And as you can see, it's already a dialogue between having that relationship of being American and also being Mexican for the flags that they are holding. It was very interesting, you know, because here we have, you know, one of these images. Actually, it's Olvera Street, you know, by the Vizcayú building, where they started having the first celebrations, you know, and then they moved eventually to different places. One of the things that was important for them to have this emphasis on identity was the beauty of our mujeres, you know. So they started doing this beauty contest, La Señorita México, La Reina of the contest, you know. And as you can see, they try to find places where they can make these events very interesting. And of course, you know, then we have this photograph from 1932, which actually is something that I wanted to touch bases with, because let's understand about this Mexican identity. This identity of El Charro, you know, of the dancer, it happens because of the calendars. That's the connection that a lot of the Mexicans have. Those images of Jesus Helguera, you know, of the cromos of all those old calendars that you might remember and that they're still around in some places, you know. And the movies. Those were the things, you know. Mexico didn't have an identity, a general identity. And somehow this president, Pascual Rubio, you know, he liked the charro outfit. He adopted it, and he became the uniform to portray Mexicans. You know, again, you know, they were really very active, trying to show this unity. And as Margarita mentioned, it's true, you know, there was this thing about, you know, one thing we have to remember when the Mexican-American War happened, there was a very clear situation where you were given the option, where you're going to go back and be part of Mexico, or if you wanted to stay in the United States, you will become an American. And obviously, the ones who stayed here, that was the preference, and that was the alliance in a sense, you know, for really adopting this other culture, you know. But again, you know, I think the constant migration, and you know, this one is interesting because we remember in 1932, there was the repatriation of Mexicans, even American-borns who were of Mexican descent. To Mexico, you know, all these people was sent back. And here we are a year later, and still, you know, we are claiming our identity. Yes, it's the charro hat, our uniform, no problem, but we have our flags, and we're gonna show the pride of who we are, as we see in this other photograph from 1950, you know. So this idea of celebrating the heroes of the independence but also celebrating whatever the cultural elements were at that time on the radio, on the film, on the magazines, or like I say, the humble calendar, you know, were the images that we were adopting, you know. Of course, the dancing, you know, some of the traditional dancing, mostly from Jalisco, you know, but eventually it grew on. And then later on, here we have, you know, Councilman Snyder receiving this bell, a gift from the Mexican government to the people of Los Angeles, and oriented to be initially for those Mexican migrants who were really nostalgic about, you know, what they had left behind. And also because they wanted to show somehow what you know, their life or how they grew up with these Mexican beliefs, especially for independence. Independence is very important for the Mexicans, you know. Cinco de Mayo is a very interesting celebration, and it was adopted a lot by the Mexicano-Chicano community because that's the one where the Battle of Puebla establishes that we were able to defeat an invader, you know. So in a sense, that was to say, hey, we're gonna be celebrating Cinco de Mayo because we're gonna tell you, yes, we were invaded, our land was taken, but we're still gonna be celebrating our heritage, and we're gonna be giving that to for future generations. We're gonna be nurturing it for future generations, you know. And among those things, here we have in Parque Mexico, you know it by Lincoln Park, Parque Mexico on Mission and Main Valley. There is all these statues that celebrate all the heroes of the independence and the revolution, you know. And of course, we had to have a parade, you know. But the interesting thing that happened, and that's why I put this float here, is that then the Mexican celebration also starts suffering or being impacted by what was happening with Cinco de Mayo. Suddenly we have these corporations, these sponsors who are going to utilize this event to promote their product, their merchandise, with the excuse of celebrating, you know, an epical moment as was the Mexican Independence Day. And here, you know, we have our leaders, Gloria Molina, with Gary Condit, you know, being the marshals of the parade in '84. I'm just giving you, you know, a quick showing of some of the floats, which actually is very interesting because, you know, I was looking at some of these photographs and I was comparing to what we are seeing now, you know, years later. And unfortunately, I will have to say that it's been a deterioration, unfortunately, you know, of the celebration. And of course, we couldn't, you know, forget our charros with their horses and the Adelita. So, you know, this is a culture that is being nurtured. Practically, we're talking officially 1931, 90 years of celebration. But if we go back to 1925, when this Mexican community united to have the celebration of Independencia, we are going, you know, we're getting closer to 100 years. And again, it was also inclusive because here they are, you know, having a float for the United Farm Workers, you know, to bring also the awareness. You know, it was not just, it's not, at that time, I think it was also the thing about showing the history, understanding what happened, and be proud of it, versus, you know, let's have some beer and let's go and dance to some, you know, reggaeton or whatever. And in this one, I'm finishing with yesterday's celebration in El Zócalo of El Grito. But I also wanted to bring into this conversation what has happened with the art. You know, art has been very important to again celebrate or to show, to educate people. You know, this is the earliest painting that we know of Padre Hidalgo. As you can see, it doesn't have the charm or how you can say the figures that we have, you know, that fighting figure that we had of the latest muralist. But I wanted to show you that. And also it's very important to understand that women were very important. Excuse me. Josefa Ortiz de Dominguez, excuse me, was essential for the movement. Give me 1 second. She was the one who nurtured the independence at her home in Querétaro. That's where they were reunited, you know. Hidalgo, Allende, Rayon, all those early insurgents were getting together. As a matter of fact, it's interesting because and these are, excuse me, criollos and Spaniards who are really talking about, hey, we are tired of being second-class citizens. Some of them, the criollos, they had some privilege, but they were not really full, you know, they didn't have the opportunity to really be able to operate beyond having some either businesses or bureaucratic jobs. They were not really ruling the New Spain territories. And Leona Vicario, also very important, you know, and sometimes we don't talk about that. We are not talking about that. I think that Independence Day, the celebration of Independence Day should be about that, talking about what these people did, why they did it. I mean, Hidalgo didn't survive a year into the independence, you know, he was killed. As a matter of fact, if we start thinking about it, a lot of our heroes from those times and independence, the Reforma period, they were, you know, Zapata, Villa, all those people were killed. You know, they didn't survive. They didn't see the victory of their fight and the results, or were able to really put into practice what the beliefs of the ideology was. And, you know, the interesting thing is how they start adopting, Mexicans, they start adopting some of the images, you know, I mean, this how you can say, allegory of the independence suddenly becomes all this glorious, you know, image as we see from these artists. Unfortunately, we don't know his name, but the piece is very, very beautiful. Or we have, for example, Diego Rivera in his mural at the National Palace, you know, where you can see all the heroes having a, you know, just getting everybody together. Although in the top, you know, in the middle, you can see Morelos, who was actually of African descent. Then you have Hidalgo, who was a full Spaniard. And then you have criollos like Allende, you know, and in the top, but in the top, then suddenly we're having the contemporaries, you know, the revolutionaries and the new government. This is a great piece also by Jose Clemente Orozco, you know. And again, comparing with the first portrait that was painted of Hidalgo, see how we also idolizing or reinterpreting the image of our heroes. A great mural too. Looking at Siqueiros is interesting because the only thing Siqueiros did was this one where when Hidalgo was killed, you know, that he was shot in Chihuahua. But you can see the style, and actually, unfortunately, I couldn't get a good image to be able to read what he says there, but obviously it's a statement of what happened in 1811. Like I say, you know, he barely lived 11 months. He survived the independence. This one is by Juan O'Gorman. So, you know, the Mexicans were very proud, and we are still very proud of this heritage. Now people are saying why this was done, because let's remember when the revolution ended 100 years ago, more or less, and, you know, the majority of the population didn't read or write. So murals were the books, the visual books, to bring this story to them, to bring the awareness of what really this country had gone through and how we were going to build a new nation. Antonio Fabres is a Spaniard from Barcelona with this very, you know, iconic, I would say, you know, glorious image of the Padre Hidalgo with his estandarte, you know. I mean, they had been very beautiful pieces. And this one is very interesting because, again, it's a guy who is an Spaniard from Barcelona, and he glorifies El Padre Hidalgo. And if I'm correct, I think he painted this in the end of the 19th century. So it's not a contemporary one. And then we go to see what is happening in our streets, in our communities, you know. I mean, we have to admit, yes, this is a self-taught artists who are doing it. But the interesting thing to me is not if they're technical proficient or anything like that. You know, I mean, we have to understand, you know, Siqueiros, Orozco, and Rivera, they had a professional education, you know, in San Carlos, they went to Europe, etc. You know. But here, again, the issue is the same. Are we going to talk about to our community? And let's remember, some of still our migrant community is very ignorant about some of these issues. Or the other aspect, we want to be proud, you know, of this heritage. So right now I'm combining some art from Mexico, Mexican artists. Some of them contemporary. Jose Luis Soto actually is an artist that is, I would say, we call it the fourth generation of muralists. The first one is considered, you know, the Tres Grandes, and then the second one you have Juan O'Gorman. What is his name? Well, Tamayo did some murals, but you know, he was not part of that same school. Then you have the third generation with Belkin and Cisneros, you know, and then there is a younger one group that started on murals. The interesting thing is in the 1970s, with the sponsorship of the government disappeared, you know, some of the artists went into becoming universal. Suddenly we have this thing about that we have to open our doors. People were talking, you artists, you Mexican artists are living in a ghetto, you know, you have to be universal. You have to become Eurocentric. You have to do what they're doing in Europe and in New York. And suddenly we are doing all these things that they're minimal or abstract, you know. And it's very interesting because some people are asking, what is this? You know, me as a public artist, you know, sometimes people ask me, why do we have this here? I don't understand it, you know, and I have to say, well, you know, that was a committee who selected it. But in the other hand, you see this, and that tells you something, right? It's talking to you, it's talking to people. This is a very interesting mural, Octavio Campo, that is in Celaya. I would say he's more of a contemporary, but if you start looking the faces, and actually this is just a detail, it's a fragment. The faces are all these, all these other bodies, you know. You have Josefa Ortiz de Dominguez, Allende in the back, you know, he's building the image of Padre Hidalgo with the bodies and clothing of the other ones. This one is also a one that I like very much for his rawness and his sincerity, you know, in Chicano Park. As a matter of fact, to be honest, I don't know if it still exists. I remember seeing it years ago, you know. He might have disappeared. And again, we don't know. But, you know, it's talking very basically, here we are, you know. This one by Cauduro is at in Chihuahua, no, in Querétaro, at the City Hall in Querétaro. And again, you know, this is one that we can say is a contemporary artist in a sense, like I say, part of the third generation, you know, with Gabriel Flores and Ceniceros. This one, I remember a section of it because this was in the corner of Gage and Brooklyn, or now Cesar Chavez, across the street from Self-Help Graphics, you know. And I remember seeing a lot of these murals. Now, the interesting thing about the murals that are produced by Chicano artists here in the United States is the combination. Yes, you have Hidalgo, but you also have Juarez, and you also have Zapata, and you also have Villa, you know. It's not just saying, hey, we just honor one individual, you know. Eduardo Urbano Merino is one of the youngest artists, you know. Eduardo probably just turned, let me think. I think it's probably 45 or so years old. This will be the fourth generation of artists in Mexico, still taking the same theme or the same subject and expressing, you know, something about this historical moment. This is another one that I remember years ago. I'm not sure, if it was in Cinco Puntos, by there in East Los Angeles. And if it's the one I believe it probably is by Manuel Cruz. One of the Chicano artists that started, painting in the streets in the late 60s. Unfortunately, Manuel is already left us, or this one, which is another interesting mural, because then you have Morelos, you have Juarez, you have Villa, you have all this, Rubén Salazar in the beginning, is this really combination of iconographies, and I love how that flag has the three face, the mestizo face, but it has also this Aztec or Hispanic weapon, holding it. This one has to do, again, I think this was in the Chihuahua, at the city hall in Chihuahua. No, not in the city hall in Chihuahua, I'm sorry. This is in the place where it used to be the prison. It was the prison where Hidalgo was kept, and they took him out of the way to kill him, And it became sort of like a museum. So Piña Morales is this very interesting mural. And then I wanted to look a little bit into kind of the printing, Also, it's a medium that has been explored a lot. And here we have this little booklet, We don't know who he did it, but, it's very clear, related to the piece before. And going back to our Chicano artist, Luis de Foot Gonzalez from the Royal Air Force, the Chicano Royal Air Force, did this, Hidalgo, beautiful, beautiful print in silkscreen. And then I brought you back to Jesus Helguera, which is the one that you learn from in the calendars. He was doing, the legend of the Isla and the Popo, all the charros, all those classical image, that were done in the late 40s, 30s, 40s, which, still being reproduced in some of the calendars, and Jesus Helguera was one of the main artists who was doing it. And again, he probably got inspired on the Spaniard, that we saw before, to also get this glorification of Hidalgo. These artists we don't know, but it's interesting because they were doing calendars. These print shops in up north by Oakland and San Francisco before he became a gentrified, I say, have this piece. And as Margarita said, it was very important because Hidalgo, what he did in his first Magna, the first document he proposed for independence, established that there was the abolition of slavery. So again, some of these posters are used were produced to promote events. But again, here you have Morelos, Hidalgo, but on the top you have Flores Magón, and I think the Nigromante is in the other one. So again, they're bringing, these different images of these heroes that we don't talk about anymore. And the famous Taller de Gráfica Popular, there was also participation. This beautiful xilography or linoleum cut, Vancelia Calderón of Morelos, in color, wonderful piece. And of course, Jose Montoya, we cannot forget one of our fathers of the Chicano art movement, So, here you see, and as you look at that Hidalgo, we're going to look at a piece later around that you see where it's coming from. It's really being inspired by Orozco, Here is a Leopoldo Mendez piece, and this one actually, it is a combination, it's a lithography, which is a different technique. You draw on a stone, and then you etch it with certain acids. You go to this process, and then you print the image. This one, I don't know who it is, but it's a very interesting piece. Again, because we have Hidalgo in the lower right, made in ceramic tile. I think it's somewhere in Texas. I have to be honest that I have to, it's opening my imagination to look more into details. This one of Chavez Morado is a very interesting mural because it's in La Lóndiga de Granaditas. That's the last battle that where Hidalgo lost and he was taken, into custody. But if you look in the middle of that kind of bluish skeleton face, is his portrait. And it's in top of this window. You probably see on the lower part, this little window. That's the window where they hang his head for people to see, So the Spaniards were sending a message of saying, this is what's going to happen to you, no? You're going to lose your head and we're going to exhibit it until all the birds or whatever, eats it up. Let's see. This is also another one in Chicano Park that I think is very interesting, because we're going back, you have Rubén Salazar, you have Madero, you have Hidalgo, Morelos, you have all these different people, but also you have El General, I'm sorry, very quickly, we have Castro, we have El Che, Corky Gonzalez, Frida is there, so this is really interesting iconography that has made this bridge somehow between the basics of Mexican culture, but also of the Mexican, American, Chicano experience, in the United States. José Luis Soto, which again is another contemporary artist, very, very dynamic in his work. So, to me, it's more interesting because it goes from the, you can see a lot of dynamism in their composition, movement. And this one is one that I like very much. Remember when we saw the other piece that I told you in the calendar? This is by Willie Heron in City Terrace. It's one of the first pieces that I ever saw when I came to the United States. And to me, it was very intriguing to see how he's using, Hidalgo, but that's the Hidalgo of Orozco. One of the most fantastic Hidalgos that I've seen. I usually say to paint Hidalgo after Orozco is a challenge because to overdo it is going to be impossible. But on the other hand, it's not about that. It's about just really expressing, something. And it's the same thing with this piece by Luis Becerra that used to be at Olvera Street. I remember seeing it years ago. I don't know what happened to it. I hope that Luis got it back. But it was a very interesting piece because also it reminds me of this artist from Chicago, Paschke, who was using this kind of fluorescent or, very colors. And again, it's a strong piece, that is appearing. This one is by Eduardo Carrillo. This is the one that is El Pueblo. It's called El Grito, That's it's a gray mural made in a ceramic tile. Here is a detail of it. See, when he just did that, he just started banging the bell and calling people to get into arms and defeat the monarchy, the Spanish monarchy. This is the Jose Clemente Orozco I was telling you. See, I mean, to me, I don't know, you have been in Guadalajara, but you have the opportunity. Actually, this photograph doesn't make justice to the power and how I can say it. It's so powerful of an image. It involves you. You're going upstairs. This is a staircase. So this figure comes towards you with all this power, all this force. You feel like yes, I want to get the arms and finish with the injustice of the world. Again, I'm repeating the one from Mexico. And I'm going to end with, because we did an exhibit of Mexican independence in 2015 as the Mexican Cultural Institute. And what we realized is that people, now it's becoming so commercial. It's much about la pachanga, Let's have some fun, let's dance, let's listen to the music and forget about the history. So part of the mission of the Mexican Cultural Institute is that. How are we going to teach? How are we going to make our communities? And I'm not just talking about the Mexican, I'm talking about all of us who have Mexican heritage. And all of us, or all of them who are interested in Mexican culture, to learn more about what happened. So in this exhibit, what we did was practically to recreate in a chronological order and bring heroes. See, as you can see on the wall, all those little things. It is really a more didactic exhibit. It's telling you what happened in a timeline in different times, all during all those 10 years from 1810 to 1821 of the Mexican independence. We wanted to bring awareness, what was used, who were these other people that we don't know, like this individual, So all these little, it was an exhibit for you to read, to stand there and learn, It was not just about go and see it and let's go. And also it had another element. Let me see. Well, here you can see other parts. We had this book that is explaining several things. The Eduardo Bautista did these beautiful pieces of Morelos, and he also contributed with this other piece, because at one point the proposal was for this piece that you see in the back, sort of like a portable mural. People will come and cut a section of it. That's why you see all these little pieces in the ground. You will cut a piece and then you will paint the void. And whatever happened, at the end, that was the second piece. As you can see, she's cutting, So it was very interesting, to see the evolution of this, I will say an interactive piece, to happen to be an interactive piece. It was never finished completely, but you can see how some areas were used or transformed. And it was also interesting to see what people would pick, to do their creative interpretation of what was in the canvas versus what they were leaving in the back on the wall. So anyway, I'm gonna end with this one. This is, again, last night, El Grito in Mexico City and El Zócalo. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Jose Antonio. Thank you very much, Margarita. I'll try to bring you back up to ask you to start your video.
I don't know why I wasn't on the screen.
Let me try. So I'm doing something wrong. I know what I'm doing wrong.
Okay. Well, I hope you can hear me.
Escape this.
I've listed, for those of you on Zoom, I listed all the books that Margarita was talking about. Thank you.
Oh, very well. Very well.
Yeah,
can you listen to Abelardo?
Yep.
Okay, that's good. Okay, if you could stop sharing your screen.
I don't see you, Abelardo.
Antonio.
I see you small and I don't hear you. I wonder why.
I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen, please.
Is he giving me instructions?
Yes. I will do viewing Jose Antonio's screen. Jose Antonio, please stop sharing your screen. I will write it down in the chat. There you go.
Yeah, he got it.
All right. As we're live, ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros, we are live. And this is what we often go through on Zoom as we're all learning this new technology. But thank you so much for joining us with this really deep presentation on Mexican independence, 210 years of Mexican independence, its relationship with the United States, Mexican identity, which is so complex. Margarita just touched on it, giving us so much information, pulling from philosophers, from authors, and their concepts of Mexicanidad. And thank you, Jose Antonio, for this presentation on artwork, which is devoted to those fathers and mothers of La Independencia de Mexico, which took place 210 years ago. We had so many people zooming in from different parts, from Glendora, from Los Angeles, from Detroit, from Che Bajarini says, I hope she does post a list of books, which we did. April May, she said that Margarita chingada is her favorite word. Melo Dominguez from Tucson says Mexican heritage 365 days a year. Yes, I agree with that. This has been, as you know, in not only in Los Angeles and Mexico City, but everywhere, this has been a much more subdued celebration of Mexican independence due, of course, to the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, and also here in Southern California due to the wildfires that we're experiencing throughout the West. But it's cultura, arte, música, comida, which brings us closer to our culture, to our families, to our histories. And so this was just a small glimpse of our Mexican identity, cultural, artistic identities. And we thank you so much, Margarita and Jose Antonio, for this presentation. For those of you who were not able to catch the complete session, you could catch it on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, on our website, lapca.org, and also on our YouTube channel at La Plaza LA. Coming up, just a little quick preview of what's coming up in this next few days. We have on Friday, Dan Guerrero. Every other week, he comes in and presents his friends, many friends that he has in the area of show business. Marga Gomez, one of the original members of Culture Clash, who is a performance artist of her own. That's Dan Guerrero Happy Hour on Friday at 7 o'clock here in Casa con la Plaza. And then next Monday, of course, we have our in Casa con la Plaza Cocina, in which we bring to you cuisine, Mexican cuisine, of course, the best cuisine in the world. In this case, Polvorones Tricolor Baking Demonstration with Elicio Lara, direct from Mexico City. And then finally on Tuesday, Mexican American History Makers with Armando Duron, a good friend of the Mexican Cultural Institute, and Julio Vallejo. So please, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Que viva Mexico. Any last words, Jose Antonio? Any last words, Margarita?
Well, actually, I was already writing on the chat. I recommend you guys to go into Netflix to see Patria. It's a great documentary by Paco Ignacio Taibo the second. And there are also the books. I don't know if they are in English yet, but they are in Spanish.
They are in Spanish.
You can get them in Amazon. As a matter of fact, if you go to Amazon Smile, please choose us as your charity so we can get some donations from them to keep this activity. But that will be a great book or video for you to see. And Paco Ignacio Taibo, man, he's excellent. He's a great intellectual, and he's down to earth. He doesn't go with redundant words. I'm sure you will love to see this.
And is this in Spanish or in English, Jose Antonio?
They are in Spanish, basically, all of the books, yes, except, of course, Octavio Paz. Okay. But I'm not sure 100%, but let's try to look for them in English. But I think they're at least 90% they are just in Spanish.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
But
thank you.
In Netflix, I think you have the option also to put subtitles. Okay. And I assume they might be doing that with Netflix. I didn't see it. I didn't pick, but it's a great program. It's a great program.
And it's called Patria. So Thank you so much. You could catch all of our sessions in Casa con la Plaza on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, and on our website. And all our upcoming sessions, you'll catch them on our website, Facebook page, and on our YouTube page, including our newest series, En Familia con la Plaza. We just posted En Familia con la Plaza today, which is a fantastic tutorial on how to make, and let me make sure I get the pronunciation right, muñecas zaguas. And so you'll get a demonstration on how to make this beautiful little doll, which was made in Mexico. So catch us on all these platforms. Soon, we hope that we'll be open at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes across the street from Olvera Street. And but for now, buenas noches a todos. Thank you again, Jose Antonio. Thank you again, Margarita. Nos vemos.
No, thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Viva Mexico.
Yeah. Viva México.
Viva, un tequilazo.
Yay. Hay que ser chingones.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.